Hello and welcome to Really Cool People, a podcast produced by Schweitzer Church. I'm your host, Jason Leininger. This is a place to hear stories of really cool people. And the hope is that as you and I listen, we'll be inspired, encouraged, and challenged through moments of serendipity. In a sermon entitled The Weight of Glory, C.S. Lewis said, "There are no ordinary people. You and I have never talked to a mere mortal." It's my joy over the next few moments to introduce you to somebody who may seem somewhat ordinary, especially to themselves, and yet they're a really cool person. Today, we're going to meet Alice Penovich. Alice is 86 years old, she'll tell us along the way. And she met her husband on a trip to Jackson, Wyoming. And they've got a love story, and it's a great one. So I invite you to lean in, listen to Alice's story as it unfolds, and find the goodness of God and just a good, beautiful soul in Alice Penovich. Let's listen. Today, we're happy to welcome Alice Penovich into the studio. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you very much.
We're glad to have you here, and we're glad to hear your story. So where would you like to start?
Well, I don't remember early childhood, 2 and 3 year olds, that much. I can remember one time my older sister decided that she would put was going to put rocks in our ears so we couldn't hear our mom calling us and we could stay outside and play as long as we wanted to. Well, okay, little rock went in my ear, and then I couldn't get it out, and so went to my mom and showing her. Well, I ended up in the emergency room because she was afraid to, poke around in my ear. And the thing that scared me the most, we went to St. Francis Hospital, and I had never seen a Catholic nun, a nursing nun. So these ladies in their long habits, I was more scared of them than I was of my situation. Then the interesting thing about that, my mother's younger sister, Frances Jean, became a nun when I was in the 6th grade, and she was a nurse, so she became a nursing sister, and spent 20 years at that before she decided they were working her too much, and she wanted to go home and take care of her dad, who was very ill.
Okay.
So she left the convent and got a letter dispensation from the Pope. And, you write to the Pope and you tell him why you want to leave the order. And so she did. But that was one of my first memories.
Did they ever get the rock out?
Yes. Yeah, the doctor,
Okay.
Yes, thank goodness. And it wasn't near the ordeal I thought it was going to be. But, like I say, I was more afraid of the nursing sisters than I was the doctor working on my ear.
How old were you about that time?
Well, that would probably have been when I was about 5.
Okay.
I was about 5 years old. And then my next big experience, it said 4th grade. Well, I had started taking violin lessons in 3rd grade. We had a lady by the name of Emma Rice, and she would come around to the grade schools and teach string instruments. And my dad had a quarter-size violin, and then he had, of course, a full size and a 3/4 size because he'd been a music school teacher, in high school mostly, but grade school also. And so I started with that, and my older sister had already been doing this for 2 years. So, okay. And we got in a little group with 5 other grade school kids. I don't think our group had a name, but they had an educational program at the big it wasn't a Coliseum. It's called the Forum in downtown Wichita, where they had all kinds of programs. The circus was there.
Mm-hmm.
The Choral Society did the Messiah once a year, and all kinds of things. So we went and showed off on the stage our wonderful talents. And I can remember standing in line in the hallway out there, and had on my little white dress that I still have. It's in my cedar chest. My little white dress that we wore. Yes, I still have it. And she looked down and she said, "Oh, isn't she cute?" Well, there were 3 other girls in that group, so I didn't know whether she was talking about me or somebody else. But anyway, that was my first public music experience. But then I was in orchestra in junior high and high school. My only problem was that I didn't like to practice, and I didn't get as good as I could have if I would have put my mind to it and really, uh, practiced as much as I
Did you
should
play
have,
violin the whole way through?
all through high school. Then I went to Friends University my, freshman year, but I wasn't in the orchestra. I didn't think I'd be good enough, so I kinda gave it up
Were
at
you in
that.
the choir at Friends?
No, I was never in a singing choir growing up. I was always in instrumental music,
Hmm.
so I didn't have that experience through school.
Mhm.
So and I didn't think I could sing worth a darn.
Well,
So
Alice, when we started right away, so we jumped in, and you've mentioned your mom, your dad, and your older sister, and then you've mentioned Wichita. So were you born in Wichita?
I was born in Wichita, and I stayed in Wichita till I got married when I was almost 19,
Okay.
and, moved to Wyoming that very day. It was Father's Day, June 15, 1958. And,
Wow.
yes, and, married a man that had been writing letters to for since the previous July. I met him in Jackson, Wyoming, when I was up there with a family that I babysat for right out of high school. They wanted to go visit relatives up in Jackson, Wyoming, and they had 3 children, and so Mr. Scott didn't think Mrs. Scott could handle 3 children and drive and all that, so, "Why don't you take Alice with you?" Because I had been babysitting for them for several years. That was how I earned my money in high school,
Hmm.
35 cents an hour.
That was big pay.
Yes, and if I babysat a whole weekend, I got a $5 bill usually, and man, did I think I had the money, and my parents, they pretty much let us if we earned money, they pretty much let us handle our money, and they knew I was gonna buy shoes, clothes, I was gonna save up and buy something that I needed.
Mhm.
School supplies, it wasn't they weren't providing for us, but, they wanted us to learn how to, you know, be reasonable with our money.
Mhm.
And we could spend it on a movie or, something like that too, but, they pretty much, tried to teach us, the way to take care of your money and spend it wisely and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But anyway, I went to, Jackson that summer. It was June 1957, and, about the middle of June, but anyway, I loved Jackson, Wyoming. In that whole area. Just loved it. And they had a swimming pool about 5 miles north of town, and since I had my driver's license, I could drive they had 2 children, Mrs. Scott's, family there. The sister had 2 children, so I would take the, 2 oldest ones of the Scott children, because the littlest one, she's only 2,
Mhm.
and then the other little girl was 4, and then their son was 7. I would take them to the swimming pool occasionally and, uh, back and forth. And so on the 7th of July of 1957, I took the children up there to the swimming pool, and I was just doing my thing. I had my swimming hat on, and I'm very nearsighted. And I've got other problems now with my eyes, but very nearsighted, so I didn't have my glasses on. So I was just diving off the diving board and minding my own business. And then pretty soon I got tired of doing that, so I went over and, swam over to the side where the neighbor boy was that had come with us and was talking with him. Pretty soon, neighbor boy left the area, and then there was this young man there, which I wasn't really paying any attention to because I was taught that you weren't the first one to start a conversation with a young gentleman.
Okay.
They started the conversation or, you just didn't. So anyway, I do not remember what he said to me the first thing, but we started a conversation. And then pretty soon I said, "Well, I got to go dry off." And I saw him, said, got out and went and sat on my towel and took my swimming hat off, and my long hair that was way past my shoulders went down. Found out later that Dan really liked girls with long hair. So anyway, so he came over and talked to me for a while, and then he said, "How would you like to just drive around and I'll show you some of the sights of Jackson?" He said, "I'm on a building crew, and we're building a bridge just north of Jackson, and I'd take you up there, and we just kind of drive around and see the countryside. And I said, well, I'd have to ask the people I'm staying with because I'm kind of the babysitter. And if they want to go out somewhere tonight, then that means I need to babysit. So I gave him the phone number. And about that time, it's probably about 5 o'clock, so it's time to go home.
Mm.
So I gathered up the children, and we went, back to where we we're staying. And he did call, and I had checked with see if my evening was free, so to speak. And yes, fine and dandy. So he came and picked me up in his little black 51 Ford, and I introduced him to the Scott family and the Sharkey family, and we drove around, and he showed me the sights of Jackson, up to the bridge and all these kind of things, and sang to me that old devil moon. I don't know if you know that song
I
or not.
don't know that song.
Oh, my goodness sakes. I won't sing it for you. But anyway, so he's singing to me because there was full moon rising up over the East Mountains there,
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
over the valley. And oh, my goodness sakes, how romantic. So this is Sunday. So Monday night, I went downtown, walked downtown. Well, it's about 3 blocks. Jackson's not all that big.
Mm-hmm.
And he had gotten a part-time evening job in a dry goods store. And so I went in there to say hi and bought a little pair of shoes, little white shoes. And he tells me later that the lady that worked with him that shift said, you better watch out for that little gal. She's got stars in her eyes. Yeah, right. I did. So anyway, Tuesday night, I went down to the ballpark because he played softball and baseball. And I found out later basketball. And so I watched his ball game. And I was all fine and dandy. And let's see, Wednesday, I went down to the square. And when he got off work, we went to the little cafe across the square and had a Coke and talked. And I was going home the next day. Our trip was over. And so I gave him a copy of my senior picture and my address and my phone number. And we said our goodbyes. And I thought, well, that was a nice little summer romance. I'd never had a summer romance before. And I never expected to hear anything again. So we go back to Wichita. Now we're in 2 cars because Mr. Scott has driven a new 57 Chevy out to Jackson. So now we have 2 cars. So I needed to drive sometimes, which was fine. Had my license. So anyway, the next week was my 18th birthday, the 14th of July. And in our family, when you have a birthday cake, before you blow out your candles, you make a wish. Of course, my wish was that I would hear from Dan. Well, my goodness sakes. The next week I did get a letter, and it was air mail. Now, back in those days, it was 3 cents to mail, a regular letter, and 6 cents for air mail. Okay. So, needless to say, I answered that letter, and I sent mine back airmail. So, that went back and forth and back and forth. Every week or so, I would get a letter, and in the fall, he went back to college at Casper to finish his degree because he had gone down there right out of high school to play on the basketball team. He and his good friend, Ben Hurley. And he was a very good basketball player. And so they both got basketball scholarships. But when the 2 years, that was a junior college in those days, associated with the University of Wyoming.
Okay.
And so they were just a few credits short, just 2 maybe or so, to get their degree. So they both joined the Army in 1953. He graduated in 52. So maybe it was 1954, whatever. They both joined the Army, and Dan spent his time at Fort Bliss, Texas. He was a radar instructor. So he didn't know a first thing about radar, but he had a book to study. So anyway, he was in Jackson then, that summer with the summer job. Then went back to Casper and got his degree in journalism. It's just an associate degree, but he got his degree. And so we're writing letters back and forth. February came, and he wrote in his letter, how would I like to get married and come and live in Wyoming. Sounded good to me. And so at supper that night, I announced that Dan had asked me to marry him, and I said yes. I was going to say yes. And I'm sure my parents were like, "What? We don't know his family. They don't know us. We don't know anything about them." You know, but they never tried to talk me out of it
Really?
because I was not the kind of girl that had a date every weekend. I was very shy, and I had my babysitting clients, and I wanted to earn money more than I wanted to go out and about. And so they knew I was a very level-headed person and all that kind of stuff. So um, Dan and I, we just continued to write letters and make plans for our wedding and decided on Father's Day. And he came down to Wichita the Wednesday before we got married. And let me tell you, when he brought his suitcase in the house and opened it up, my mom and I were both standing there, and she tells me this later. The big impression she had was how neat his suitcase was packed. Now, he is 5 years old, was 5 years older than I am, almost 5, not quite. So he wasn't a silly teenager. You know, he was a mature person. Then I'm getting all tongue-tied. A mature person, you know.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we got married and had a nice wedding. Ran out of treats because my sister had gotten married 3 years prior to that, and she got married on a Thursday afternoon because the man she married was a fireman, and he did not want his shift to come to his wedding because they like to play dirty tricks.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So they got married on a Thursday afternoon and during his vacation time. So my parents, we just ordered the same amount of, cake and punch and stuff we'd had for her wedding. Well, I had about, I don't know how many times the people because we always went to the little white Quaker church at the corner of 23rd and Jackson. And all my life, I don't know when I started, but all my life, it was every Sunday, we went to Daddy's church, although he was in another church directing the choir. But anyway, we had invited 3 groups, and we never thought about the groups. I was in Rainbow Girls, so we invited that group. I was in a sorority at Friends, Delta Rho Alpha Nu, and the church, of course. You invite the church where you've grown up. What am I going to say? Because everybody was so curious to see who I was getting married to, that the church was full. So during the reception, of course, they always take the bride and groom up to take the pictures, which kind of sad because you kind of miss a good part of your reception if you do.
Yeah.
But anyway, I found out later, my 2 cousins who were cutting the cake and serving the punch and stuff were just like, "Oh, what are we going to do?" They just started cutting smaller and smaller pieces of cake.
It's about like running out of wine for the first miracle.
That is right. That is right.
Yeah.
But see, I didn't know anything about it until years later.
Huh.
My mother didn't come up and say, "Oh, Alice, we're running out of things for the reception." She didn't tell me this until,
Wow.
quite a few years later. So I didn't know about it. So anyway, Dan and I go to Wyoming, and he had bought a red and white trailer, which now people have campers bigger than what we started our married life with. It was 28 feet long and 8 feet wide. And he had it parked beside his parents' house. And, it was fine. And his family didn't know me either. And they were so good to me, especially his mother. He was the favorite child because he was born on Mother's Day.
Huh.
So he was kind of a favorite child.
Yeah.
And he had 3 older sisters and a brother and a younger sister. And so they had, a fairly large family. And they were all so good to me. If they hadn't have been, my life would have been miserable because I was 1,000 miles away from home. And I woke up on my 19th birthday a month later, and suddenly I was homesick.
Huh.
So I had to fight that for a few months. But like I say, his mother was so good to me. And when Dan told her that it was my birthday on the 14th of July, She went to town and bought chicken and I don't know what all, and made a fried chicken dinner and a birthday cake and had a party for me that evening. Now,
Wow.
that's the kind of person she was.
Mhm.
So I was very lucky, very lucky. And I've told this to my friend Patsy Spindler, and she says it was a God thing,
Huh.
and I always felt like God would watch out for me, even as a young child.
Hmm.
You know, I never worried once about marrying somebody I really didn't know well and moving away from home because God was there.
Yeah.
What's to worry? And Dan was a Christian. He
Hmm.
had joined the Methodist Church when he was in the Army at Fort Bliss, Texas. And so we just started going to, I'm sure we went to church that very first Sunday we were up there. And, we've moved 7 times in our married life.
Huh.
Dan would always move for a better job when he got into the printing
Yeah.
and end of things. And we moved to Salt Lake and went to the First Methodist Church there, a Second South and Second East. In Salt Lake, everything is measured from Temple Square.
Okay.
So you're 2 blocks south and 2 blocks east of Temple Square.
Wow.
There's actually 3 Methodist churches in Salt Lake. So we went to First Methodist Church in the downtown. And by that time, we'd been married, 7 years, something like that. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to count it up. But anyway, we had 3 little boys, 2, 3, and 4.5.
Wow.
Yes. I was very busy. I was pregnant 3 Thanksgivings in a row. But anyway, we got up Sunday morning, dressed our little boys, sometimes alike, and the people thought we had triplets, but we didn't, and went to church every Sunday.
Hmm.
By that time, we had a bigger trailer, 45 by 8s, and we had moved it down to Salt Lake, believe it or not.
Huh.
Lived in a real nice trailer court 10 miles north of Salt Lake at Woods Cross, Utah. Dan worked for the newspaper at Bountiful, Utah, which is across the highway to the east. And I loved Utah. I had wonderful friends there. We used to babysit each other's kids, Peggy Tullis and I. She had 4 and I had 3. But then we had a little girl in 1964.
Hmm.
So, and we stayed there 3 years. And then Dan got a job at the University of Illinois newspaper, the Daily Illini. So off we went to the flatlands of Illinois. Left those mountains. I was kind of sad about that. But we stayed there 2 years. And the first thing we did when we got to the Champaign area, we moved to Mahomet, which is 10 miles to the west, and we still had a trailer, but a bigger one. It was 3 bedrooms and 10 by 55. We thought we really had a big house. It was 2 payments from being paid off, so we paid to have it taken to Illinois.
Wow.
I remember sitting in this park north, or there at Mahomet. It's Lake of the Woods State Park, and we were sitting there having a picnic. Us, Dan and I, and the 4 kids, when they pulled that trailer past us on the road. And boy, did the cheers go up. So we hurried up with our picnic and went over to the trailer court where we were going to live and got ourselves settled. And we stayed there till 1968. And Dan got a job at Morton, Illinois, which is about 10 miles east of Peoria.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the second shift supervisor for the Tazewell County News. And that was 1968. And my first task there was my oldest boy, Danny, had already been a Cub Scout for almost a year. And so he, needless to say, wanted to stay in Cub Scouts. And they had a Cub Scout pack at the church in Morton, and associated with Scout Troop 178. So needless to say, I became a den mother. Well, then the next year, Douglas was old enough, so he became a Cub Scout. A year after that, Dean was old enough, so he became a Cub Scout. And long story short, and Dan became a Scoutmaster then. We Blows Leader Scoutmaster as time went on. And Danny's an Eagle Scout, and so is Dean. Douglas got interested in cars and body work and stuff, so he never quite went that far. So, but anyway, this is more about Dan than me, but that's because we had such a good partnership.
Mm-hmm.
We were married 65 years, 2 months shy of 65 years when he passed away.
Huh.
And it seemed like we were pretty much always on the same page. We hardly had very, very many disagreements.
How in the world did it work like that? Because
Well, I don't know.
I was trying to count up how many days you actually saw him before you got married to him.
I say it's a God thing.
It's about 5 or 6, I think.
It was only 4.
It was only 4 days.
Well, then then 4 days. 4 days from Wichita, from Wednesday to Sunday when we got married.
Right. So about 8 days.
So about 8 days. But lots of letters, and I still have every one of those letters.
Do you really?
He didn't keep my letters. But I do. Yes, I have every one of those letters. And in my cedar chest. So.
Did you get those out and read them?
I would if I could. I have macular degeneration, and it's very hard for me to read things like that now. Although he had really good handwriting.
How about over the course of your married life? Did you ever get them out, like, say, maybe when you were 30 years in and read those? Or
No. I had him. I didn't really need to read the letters. So, and he was a very good husband. He was very involved with his kids, although he was not a helicopter, what do they call it, helicopter parent.
Yeah.
He was the kind of dad that let's say it's fall and you want to rake leaves. When we moved to Morton, we had big trees around us. And he wouldn't say, hey, kids, I need to have you get out there and rake those leaves. He would say, hey, come on, guys, we're out there and rake leaves. Whoever has the biggest pile when we're done gets a prize. Well, that was a stick of dentine chewing gum. That was what you were going to get. But, he always worked with them and, had some kind of a thing going on. It wasn't like, you had to get out there and do it on your own. He was always very good about that. So
that's an amazing story. It's an amazing love story to think about.
Well, see, and it even goes on, and we always were involved in church. And when we lived in Salt Lake, we both taught Sunday school. I taught more than he did, but anyway, I went to a Sunday school teacher's workshop in 1965, and I was introduced to what I thought was a brand new instrument in the world called an auto harp. And they had that there to demonstrate, for the teachers.
Right.
And I just thought, oh, this is wonderful, since I didn't have a piano at that time, because I learned to play the piano when I was younger, and I didn't have, any music thing to do. And so I went home and I called my dad, and I said, oh, Daddy, I have just found the most wonderful new instrument, and I'm describing it to him. And he says, oh, they've been around 100 years. They were invented in Germany in about 1863, somewhere along there. And so we found out we could order one through the Sears catalog, which we did. And so my dad visited that summer, first summer I had it, and he could tune it by ear. I was having to use a pitch pipe, which, But anyway, I had that little auto harp for a long, long time, and so always used it in Sunday school. And then when we moved up to Morton, same thing, Sunday school, stuff like that. Then in the early 70s, Dan decided he's going to learn to play the guitar. So he went to the YMCA and took a few lessons, he had bought a little guitar, wasn't a great big one, but he had bought this little guitar. And then when he came home with his homework, and I didn't understand this guitar chords.
Okay.
The little squares and all the lines and stuff. I didn't have a clue how that worked. As soon as I understood that the vertical lines were the strings and the horizontal line and those little dots is where you put your fingers, well, Sunday afternoons was my time to practice. And I learned all kinds of chords, but I didn't know what to do with them. So I took some music lessons over at the music store, and I don't know if you're probably too young to remember Christy Lane, but she had a band and a club over in East Peoria. She was one of the first entertainers who went with USO troops to Vietnam. to
Okay.
do the USO troops,
Okay.
to do the shows.
Yeah.
Well, Fred Newell played guitar in her band, and so when I went to the music store to see about getting lessons, that's who showed up. So I took lessons from him for, oh my goodness sake, several months. And then all of a sudden she decides that the band is going to move to Nashville. Now she's big time, you know. And she had a theater in Branson for a while.
Wow.
So anyway, that ended my lessons, but I knew enough to go on my own.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't long before I was helping lead worship in the park. We always had outdoor worship in the park on Sunday mornings. And then there were a couple of sister-in-laws who sang duets at our church. They were in the choir and would ask me to go with them to do programs different places. And I've accompanied them in church a couple of times. And so that ended pretty good till we moved down here, and then Dan decided to play the guitar more, and I played the auto harp more, and I lost all of my strength in my fingers, and I don't play the guitar anymore.
What do you play the auto harp for?
I've played it forever since 1965.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when we moved down here, and Dan got to where he could really play better, then I would always play auto harp, and he'd play guitar. And so the way we got to Springfield, I'm talking about him more than I am myself. But there's no other way when you've been married to somebody 65 years and your life is tied up in that.
Yeah.
You know, I hardly ever did anything on my own.
Huh.
It was always well, I'd go out and accompany people on my auto harp or on my either auto harp or guitar, many times, and through scouting and all of that kind of stuff. The best family vacation we ever had was going to Philmont Scout Ranch.
Huh.
I didn't have to do anything. The kids all went out every morning.
Yeah.
The boys went out on this long hike, and Deanna had a deal where she'd meet the school bus in the mornings, and they'd go have activities for the younger siblings. And Dan was in Scoutmaster training, and I could do whatever activity they had for the moms. You know, they'd take us on a little tour somewhere or some kind of a craft activity, and it was really, really a good vacation. So,
Did you ever sense that you missed out on anything?
no, I really didn't, because I was always busy. But it was always more family oriented, rather than I'll go off and do such and so for myself. There was a few times as the kids got older, and I was always a very shy person, and I would not have gone to a nursing home, for instance. When I was in about third grade, the Sunday school classes went to a nursing home, and in those days, it wasn't a nice complex like we usually have now. It was a large white house, about 3 stories, and when we went onto the upper floor, there were several of the older people who had their arms tied to the railings of their beds, and I was just horrified.
Huh.
I thought they were being held prisoner, and what is this? And but my goodness sakes. So I went home, was telling my parents about it, and my dad says, well, now you have to realize that there's a lot of older people who don't realize where they are, and they try to get out of bed on their own without help, and they fall and they hurt themselves. So that's just for their protection. Okay, I could accept that. But from then on, as we moved around and always involved in church, you was always getting people to sign up to go to nursing and to do this and that. Well, I never would, but I had kind of forgotten why. But along comes 1976, and we live in Morton, Illinois. And I've been teaching 5th grade Sunday school for 3 years. And about the 3rd Sunday of May, in fact, I think it was even Mother's Day, I don't know, our Sunday school classes were upstairs. So I came down the stairs between Sunday school and church, because you always had a little, 15 to 20 minutes there. So I saw Pastor Philip Eisnogel standing there. He was the pastor in charge of getting Sunday school teachers. And I said, oh, Phil, I think I'd like to do something new next year. I've been teaching 5th grade Sunday school for 3 years now. I'd like to do something new next fall. He said, well, how would you like to help with the handbell choir? I said, okay. I had no clue what a handbell choir was. I had never heard of it, didn't know. But I figured choir, okay. So fine. The next morning, Mary Swanstrom, the choir director, calls me. She said, "Oh, Phil told me that you will be willing to direct the handbell choir." I said, "Well, I'm willing to help. I've never directed anything before."
Wow.
And so she said, "Well, now there's a meeting of they call it the FLUMS, the Fellowship of United Methodist Musicians. We'll have a conference over at Bloomington in August, and they will have sessions for handbell directors. And the church would be willing to pay your way, and you can ride over with the other folks that are going. The man that was the youth choir director and several other music people were going to this conference. And I could ride over with them, and the church would pay my way because we stayed in the dorms.
Huh.
And my children were the boys were in high school by that time. And Deanna was in 8th grade, I believe. So they were old enough that I could be gone for a few days. And so away I went. And so I tell you, the fellow leading that group had a handbell choir in Washington, Illinois, which was just north of Morton. Back in those days, handbells were really popular. Lots of people had handbells.
Yeah.
And so when he picked up that handbell and rang it, oh my goodness, my heart said, "That's for you." And so I, got back to church, and we only had 2 octaves to start with. But we put out the word, and 13 junior high girls showed up. And long story short, it wasn't long till we had a group of ladies who wanted to have a group from the United Methodist Women. So we had a ladies group start, and that was the first year.
Wow. So
during the second year, the ladies group had enough music learned, that we played in church once, Well, it got so that the high school group, which, the junior high girls group soon morphed into a high school group.
Yeah.
And then my youngest son, Dean, he's very musical. And so he joined that group and several others. And that group stayed together, more than 5 years, until they all started graduating from high school.
Yeah.
And we went to festivals, and oh my goodness sakes, it was a wonderful experience. And so anyway, when the ladies got to going really good, and they'd played in church a couple of times, one of them said, "Alice, we've got to go out to Restmore and do a program." Well, Restmore is the local nursing home. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get out of this. This is something I will have to do.
Yeah.
Even if I feel reluctant to do this. And so we loaded up our equipment and went out there and got all set up. And it was really funny. We was ready to start our program when one of the workers there was pushing a little old lady down the hallway to come to the program. She said in a very loud, quarrelsome voice, "I don't care a thing about those bells." and we all just laughed, And so that just started me being okay with going to nursing homes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And now that I'm down here and we have the Joy Pickers and the Joy Singers, it's been a joy of my life to go and, to see the response of people when we do music, and when they will respond and sing with us and, clap their hands, tap their feet, some kind of response you'll almost always get in even a memory care unit. They say, I have read that music is about the last thing that leaves your brain.
Yeah.
People will respond to music when they won't respond to anything else. And it's just been the joy of my life to be involved in all of that. So,
have you got any hidden talents that you don't think are talents, but other people have noticed?
Oh my goodness. I can't think of anything.
Has anybody ever called you a storyteller?
No.
Oh, well, you are. You're a good storyteller. And then you do voices, like you took that lady's voice and you did that.
Well, it was such a memory, my goodness sakes. We didn't expect her to not want to come to our program.
Oh, no.
I mean, after all.
Yeah.
But she didn't want to. But when our children all graduated from high school, Dan and I had been in a Bible study group with the same couples for, oh my goodness sakes, almost 7 years. It started out to be a 3-year study through the Bible.
Yeah.
We had all of those books, and that was going to be a 3-year study through the Bible. We were in our 7th year because our church there in Morton always had a special Lenten study, and they would have a special Advent study.
Okay.
And we wanted to do those too.
Yeah.
So we would quit wherever we were in our study and do the Lenten and the Advent.
Sure.
So, then that would kind of put us behind.
Yeah.
We did not mind because we had about 7 couples. We alternated going to different one's house, and everything. And it was a wonderful time. We even went on a trip up to Chicago once to see a play, and we went down to St. Louis to see another musical play, and we went to the Amana colonies, so it was a whole, besides studying the Bible.
Right.
We had a really wonderful time, and we were all in the couples club that met once a month at the church.
Okay.
And did activities and took turns planning activities and all that good stuff. The last book that Dan and I studied was by Charles Swindoll called Improving Your Serve. And part of the thing that he was saying, okay, you've become a Christian when you're one of God's children, so what are you going to do now? You're going to sit at home and just do nothing? Well, we thought about it. I don't think we discussed it, but, what are you going to do? We both had been doing many things. He'd been involved in scouting, and I was involved in all this music stuff. But he also was looking for a different job. He was still in the printing activities, and he'd been working for an ad agency, Mace Advertising. But he was working for a printing company up in Pontiac, Illinois, which is, he'd go up there in the week, and then come home on the weekends. And so he was really kind of looking around for something, And so we both read that Sunday afternoon in the Peoria Journal-Star an ad for house parents at a children's home in Farmington, Missouri. And about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Dan said, hey, did you by any chance read that ad in the paper about house parents at a children's home in Missouri? I said, yes, I did. He said, what do you think about that? And I said, well, I don't know. We've been house parents with our own kids for doing everything here, everything. But anyway, we went down there and interviewed. The young fellow he wasn't so young, but the fellow that interviewed us told the people we were going to replace, I don't think they'll work out. They're too naive. But long story short, we did get hired there.
How long did you stay?
18 months. We stayed there 18 months. And then we heard about an opening here in Springfield at the Regional Girls Shelter. Now, they have a different program now. It's called Ashley House. It's at the corner of Cedar Brook and Pythian.
Okay.
Big white house. Used to belong to the Thomas, now I'm going to Ashley's, the doctor, Thomas Ashley. That was their home. And so we came down and interviewed, and the thing of the man that was the director there had been a counselor at Farmington, so he knew us, And so we got hired there. And the main reason we wanted to come to Springfield because our daughter had graduated from high school. The boys were out on their own. 2 boys had already joined the National Guard.
Okay.
And Danny was working for a construction company.
Okay.
So and the youngest one had gotten married when he was 19, and Peggy was 18. Now, here's the thing. They were in bell choir together for 5 years, so they knew each other really well.
Yeah, I would say so.
Been on trips together,
yeah,
in vans and stuff. So, and they've been married 45 years now. So anyway, where am I?
You moved
We're
down
coming
here
down here
because
to
your daughter's
Springfield
down
because
here.
we wanted her to go to college.
Yeah.
We thought if we got her down here and MSU, she could, get in college, which she did. But then she got acquainted with the boy that she had been in love with in high school, her senior year in high school. And well, now then, they got married, but he passed away some years ago. He had brain cancer. I won't go into all of that, but anyway. So that's what got us here to Springfield was the Regional Girl Shelter. And part of their program was visiting a church every Sunday, because they're sponsored by Presbyterian Children's Services, whose offices are in St. Louis. And they have the facility in Farmington, one in Moberly, and then here at Springfield. And so we had 12 girls most of the time. That's a big house, room for, and we would let the girls take turns choosing where they wanted to go to church. So we visited lots of churches, Baptist, Catholic, the Mormon Church, the Assembly of God, and Schweitzer, of course, and, other, practically many churches in Springfield over the time. We liked Schweitzer really well. That's when we just had the sanctuary was in the West Fellowship Hall now. And the girls always liked Schweitzer. And then they had the building program and all that good stuff. And then came word that they were getting handbills. And Bob McDowell was going to be the first director. Well, that that convinced me where I was going to join. So we joined Schweitzer in 1985.
Okay.
And I was in the handbill choir until 2 years ago. And then I gave it up because of my eyesight. Now, Dennis Edwards, bless his heart, has a program on his computer called Note Flight. And he can enlarge music. He would isolate just the notes I played, which was the F and G above middle C, and then enlarge that. And that kept me in bell choir 6 years longer than I would have been able to. But I gave it up 2 years ago because, there becomes a point when it's going to get more and more pages of music because now you've got bigger and bigger notes. So I decided that I just needed 40. I'd been with it 46 years, and I thought, okay, it's okay. It's okay to do something else. And when I retired, well, let's see, Dan retired from the Girl Shelter in 1993, and he was so wonderful to plan activities for the girls to do. At one summer, he managed to get 10 bicycles donated here and there and everywhere. 12.
Wow.
Well, 10 bicycles because we had our own bicycles. Dan and I did. And he would load those bicycles up in the shelter's pickup, and we would go out to Wilson's Creek Battlefield, and they would ride the trails, and I would drive the van in case somebody got too tired or whatever. And when we had our recognition dinners, which we did every other month, they got recognized for good grades, anything positive we could recognize for. Even if they went to the dentist, they got an award for bravery. So, he would give them an award for doing that 5 mile, 5 mile hike. But he put his scout skills to work, let me tell you.
Yeah.
In the wintertime, he took them sledding down there at that park there on Pythian, and sledding, anything he could find of. And movie theaters and other activities such as that here in Springfield were so good to let us bring the girls to activities. If he would call up and say, this is Dan Penovich, and I'm one of the child care workers. Oh, they called us house parents back in those days. House parents, then we became counselors, and then we became child care workers. The job didn't change, only the description there, only the title. But anyway, he would call maybe on a Friday night. By that time, the girls Saturday they would have their allowance. And they didn't have to pay, though, to get in. They would let us come to the movie. And then they had money for popcorn and whatever they wanted. So it was quite the experience. And
Alice, out of all that experiences, your several moves, raising your own kids, having all these other kids that came through, you got any bits of wisdom that you picked up and you think are really important and valuable?
Well, one of the most important things that I learned at the girl, with working with other people's children is don't react angrily if somebody else is angry, because it just accelerates the situation. You try to remain calm, find out what the problem is, and sit down and talk about it, and don't be quick. We didn't have punishments at the girls' shelter. you're going to lose a privilege.
Yeah.
That was it. It wasn't going to be a physical punishment. And so many of the girls that came to us, that's all they expected
Mm-hmm.
was some kind of a physical reaction, and so you just wanted to remain calm and not get all bent out of shape about things. And if girls got in an argument, you didn't want to take part in the argument,
Yeah.
side with one or the other.
That's right.
You wanted to figure out what the, situation was and work through that and not get yourself upset,
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. And we always had another couple to work with. It wasn't just us.
Uh-huh.
We would work a week at a time. And until we bought our house here in about 1985, we would work here a week and then we would go home to Morton for a week.
Oh, wow.
And then we'd come back here for a week and then go home to Morton for a week. And we had the rule. Well, it wasn't a rule, but the policy was we could talk about work from Springfield to St. Louis or Farmington to St. Louis. And once we passed St. Louis, you let the job go.
Yeah.
You
That's a good bit of wisdom right there.
So,
that's a good bit of wisdom.
and not take that home. And we didn't talk about the job too much at home, even though our children didn't know the people we were working with.
Yeah.
But it also was, if we went out to eat, we tried not to talk about the job at work because you never knew who was sitting around you.
Yeah.
And we were very cautious to protect the girls' privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And not mention names or any situations, that somebody might recognize.
Yeah.
So that was, real important.
What are you looking forward to in life right now?
Keeping as healthy as possible so I can keep on as long as possible.
Okay.
Right now, I'm 86. I just turned 86. And I'm involved in a lot of things here at church that I want to stay involved with as long as I feel I contribute. And I'm not sure I do because my singing voice has gotten kind of, raspy and thin and all that kind of stuff. But, I don't want to sit in my rocking chair all day. Although I've got a little dog that won't let me do that. She wants to go sit on the couch with me. So,
Yeah.
I just want to stay involved and active as long as possible. And just do what I can do. And I'm kind of limited at that now because I've quit driving.
Mm.
I had a fender bender on the way home from choir the first Wednesday of February when it was raining. And luckily nobody was hurt and my car still drives and I've given it to my son, Danny. It's his work car, one of his work cars. And so I don't drive anymore. My grandson brought me today.
Okay.
And Danny brings me on Sundays.
Yeah.
And so I depend on, now lots of times when Joy Pickers and Joy Singers have their programs, I'll get a ride to church by one of those folks, and then Cheryl will take me around.
Yeah.
Cheryl Mall, she's very good to provide transportation.
She is.
So that's the big handicap in my life right now. But I've always had eye problems since I don't know when they started, because I started wearing glasses in 5th grade.
Wow.
I was sitting on the front row and I still wasn't reading the blackboard.
Uh-huh.
So I guess the teacher must have told my mother, who just happened to be president of the PTA, Alice needs to have her eyes checked.
Yeah.
And so I started wearing glasses then. But they've done all they can for me with glasses now, so it is what it is.
It is.
So
Alice, thank you so much.
But you're surely welcome. I know I just kind of rattle on.
No, it's been delightful. And you've got stories, and the stories go all kinds of places. And
well, I could,
beautiful life.
Ramble. Yes, and I say I give it all to God.
Yeah.
Because, and when my husband passed, it's like I told Bob Cassidy, I feel guilty sometimes because I am so thankful that he went quickly and quietly in no pain. I didn't expect him to die that day, but when he did, he went quickly and quietly, and I walked to the window. It was April the 12th, 2023, 2 years ago. I walked to the window, and it was a beautiful day with bright blue sky and white puffy clouds, And my heart just sang, safe in the arms of Jesus, you know? And my daughter passed away 2 months later. Now, she had cancer. Started with breast cancer, went many places, and the last few weeks of her life, it was not good. And when she passed away in August, once again, I had to thank God that she is no longer suffering. She is with her dad. She is with Jesus. And she has her heavenly body, and they are healthy. Or however heaven's going to be. It's somewhat hard to visualize for me. But I know it's going to be wonderful. You know?
It is.
It's not that I'm trying to hurry my journey along.
No.
You know? I'm just glad I know where they are.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the Lord bless you and keep you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, a big thank you to Alice for sharing her story. In listening today, I hope that you were inspired, encouraged, and challenged, and that you can begin to behold the really cool people around you. The Really Cool People podcast is produced by Schweitzer Church, Springfield, Missouri. Taylor Likes is our executive producer and editor, and I'm your host, Jason Leininger. You can help us out by liking, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. Until next time, stay cool.